Hi, I'm Colby Reade with the MJ Murdoch Charitable Trust. We are in an unprecedented moment right now for the nonprofit sector, one that is marked by uncertainty, increased demand, and real challenges for organizations across the Pacific Northwest. We know that many of you are feeling this in an acute way, and we wanted to take just a moment to share a bit about what we're seeing and hearing and where the Murdoch Trust stands in terms of supporting the sector through this period. I'm joined today by Romanita Hairston, CEO of the Murdoch Trust, to talk briefly about the current state of the sector and our path forward together. Romanita, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Colby. It's good to be here.
Romanita, we'd like to start just kind of top level. What are you hearing from nonprofit leaders right now about the challenges that they're facing?
Well, as a part of our 50th anniversary, we did a series of listening sessions, and that revealed a couple of patterns, but also I would say just in conversation with leaders through a variety of external engagements and just collective collaborations and convenings in the field, I think there's a few things that stand out to me. One is related to the increased pressures on leaders to lead in the moment in time that we find ourselves in. I hear people talk about that as meeting the moment, right? And knowing what leadership is required of them as our social and sectoral context changes. The other is a lot of leaders are feeling the pressure of staff burnout, how to keep their staff motivated and retained through periods of what has been uncertainty and change from the pandemic until now. The other is increased funding pressures. As the landscape of funding in the sector shifts, leaders are facing that challenge, and organizations and all of their staff are facing that challenge and dealing with that uncertainty. And then the last thing that I would say is, while everyone is thinking about that, they are also facing increased need. As resources and programs have grown, need has also grown around that, and even with the increased growth in the sector, there is still greater need. I like to say strategic intent often exceeds strategic capacity.
We're actually seeing unprecedented demand when it comes to our grant applications. What does that signal to you about what's happening in our communities?
It really signals to me that there's true increased demands for services. I think it signals that organizations are feeling the pressures of the economic shifts and of the funding shifts. And it suggests that the real compound nature of the change that we have experienced is taking hold. And so we're dealing with a very real moment of change and an inflection point, as we might call it, in thinking about the sector. When it comes to our work, when you think about our last LOI cycle, we had over 3 times the number of LOIs that we normally have. And that means that as we think about our capacity, that there will be really good projects and really good work that we won't be able to fund. And that's not only difficult, we hold that, as you know, with a real sense of compassion. And we feel that as a staff. While in recent years, we've given out more than is required to do, we want to continue to evaluate what are the right levels of giving. And we have periodic times where we will look at that and think about that, looking at our short-term goals relative to our long-term goals. I think the real thing it says is there's going to be increased pressure on funders to really think about their priorities, right? And we want to be clear about what's priority for us, how are we funding, when are we funding. We want to be transparent about when those cycles are. Knowing that we have less capability to meet that increased and growing need. And therefore, we want all of our grantees and those who might be grant seekers to have real clarity from us.
In these times of challenge, what is giving you hope, though, as you're looking at the sector? What gives you reason for optimism as we look out at the communities we serve?
The biggest thing that gives me optimism is the sector itself, the leaders and the individuals inside of those organizations who show up time after time. In the midst of complexity in our social landscape, leaders are showing up, helping to not just build bridges, but to cross those bridges and to figure out how to work together to solve challenges. People are building what we call dense networks, these layers of connectivity to think about how to solve the challenges that are in front of us. Organizations are being innovative. They're asking daring questions about how they do their work, what is mission critical, leveraging technology to solve solutions and to unleash greater human capacity. The sector is resilient. The sector has faced challenges before and has continued to work through them. And I just have this fundamental belief that in the nonprofit sector is some of the most innovative and creative minds. Layer that on top of people who are missionally dedicated to the work, who show up and do it because they believe in it and because they care about others. In there are winning recipes to the intractable challenges that we face.
Just as we're wrapping up, what would you like to have folks maybe take away from this? What would you like people in our sector to know as we're moving forward in terms of our work and just kind of what we're seeing in the community?
Yeah. That one, we recognize that the challenges are real. We recognize that there are those of you out there who have concerns about funding and you're wondering how will philanthropy show up in this season, and that we are committed to doing the best that we can to show up in ways that aid you in your mission. And that includes being really clear about our priorities. And while we don't have the capacity to fund every good thing that is out there, we want to make sure that you're super clear about what our priorities are in this season, that you're able to really clearly understand if you are eligible, and that we want to make that time that it takes you to figure that out as streamlined as possible so that you can find funding if it's not with us in other places where the work that you do aligns with the mission of the organizations that you're seeking support from. We care about you, we care about the work that you do, and while we can't fund all the work, we certainly recognize the value of work that we don't fund. And so to those organizations and leaders where we don't fund your work, know that that doesn't mean we don't value it and that we don't stand with you in the work that you do.
Very well said. Thank you so much, Romanita. And thank you all for joining us for this conversation. Of course, if you'd like to learn more about our grant making, our programs, or resources for the nonprofit sector, please feel free to visit us at murdochtrust.org. Thank you again for joining us.